It's a Saturday morning. You're at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, trying to plan a family outing. The kids are restless, they want fun. You want to give it to them. But as you scan the options, the math starts to feel off. A movie, an arcade stop, maybe coffee and snacks along the way. Before the day really begins, $100 is gone. It feels small, just a little treat. But these small decisions stack up, week after week. I've been there too. That quiet moment of looking at a bank statement and wondering why things feel tighter, even after a raise. Today, middle-class families spend between $4,500 and $6,000 a year on leisure and entertainment, roughly $5,000 when you smooth it out. You might be earning what's considered a solid income, somewhere between $80,000 and $150,000, and yet leisure costs keep creeping upward. It leads to a heavy question. Why does family time feel like a luxury you can't quite afford? What surprised me wasn't just how expensive things had become. It was how quietly we stopped noticing the alternatives. Before we go any further, I want to be clear. The pressure you're feeling isn't because you're bad at budgeting or careless with money. You're not failing. We live in a system where consumer culture has framed paid experiences as the default version of fun. Movies, attractions, memberships, subscriptions, they're marketed relentlessly. Meanwhile, free alternatives like public parks fade into the background, not because they lack value, but because they're invisible in a world driven by advertising. Modern life is optimized for extraction, our money, our time, our attention, rather than our well-being. The issue isn't discipline or motivation, it's a constant quiet push toward a commodified version of happiness. But there's a small shift in perspective that changes how this system works on you. Once you see it, it's hard to walk past a park the same way again. I call this shift the park bench economy. It's a way of seeing free public spaces not as empty grass or playgrounds, but as a genuine financial and emotional lifeline. It's about understanding how these spaces quietly replace expenses we've come to treat as unavoidable. Looking ahead to 2026, projections suggest inflation hovering in the 2.3% to 2.8% range, with direct leisure and entertainment spending holding near $6,000 a year. Under those projections, redirecting even part of that time toward parks can have a meaningful financial impact. This is where the math starts to make sense. When you replace even a portion of paid leisure with parks, the savings don't come from one dramatic change. They come from several ordinary substitutions working together. Fewer paid outings, activities you no longer need to pay for, routines that reduce how often small problems turn into expensive ones. Taken together, these everyday shifts are how families can approach several $1,000s a year in total savings without giving anything up. And to stay grounded, parks aren't entirely free. There's gas, a bus fare, or $10 to $20 for picnic food. But compared to a $100 or $150 paid outing, those costs fade quickly into the background. Here's the part most people miss. The real cost isn't the $100 day out. It's what that choice quietly trains us to repeat. Our brains are wired for hyperbolic discounting. We're naturally drawn to immediate, flashy rewards, even when quieter options deliver better results over time. It usually starts small. One skipped park visit for a special paid event. Then another. Weekly movies alone can add hundreds of dollars a year. Combined with less movement, higher stress, and the financial weight of constant spending, medical bills often rise much sooner, by an average of around $2,000 in the near term. This is how people end up in what many call the squeeze, spending more on fun that leaves them more exhausted than restored. By contrast, people who regularly use parks are projected to save around $1,400 a year in healthcare costs alone. Not because parks are a miracle solution, but because they support habits, movement, recovery, lower stress, that quietly prevent recurring expenses from taking hold. And none of this is accidental. This isn't about personal discipline. It's about incentives. And once you see who benefits, the pattern becomes hard to ignore. Advertising pushes commodified fun because it's profitable. Cities, meanwhile, often underfund public parks, creating maintenance gaps that make paid options appear more attractive by comparison. In a K-shaped economy, middle-class families end up financing this cycle from both ends. The entertainment industry benefits from your spending. Governments benefit from the taxes on that spending. Parks, meanwhile, work quietly in the background. In some cities, they boost property values by hundreds of millions of dollars and generate over $1 billion in economic activity through household savings. They're an escape hatch from the consumer cycle if we choose to use them. Here's a different mental model: experience equity. We often measure the value of fun by the amount of money spent on it. A $200 day out feels more legitimate than a free afternoon. Parks challenge that assumption by offering the same joy and better health without the price tag. Experience equity means prioritizing well-being over status. It's about tracking the value of your free time, not just your paid experiences. When you stop seeing parks as a cheap alternative and start seeing them as a high-return investment in autonomy, the equation shifts. What matters here isn't doing more. It's changing what your default becomes. You don't need a lifestyle overhaul to start. Small shifts are enough. Spend 5 minutes finding parks within a 15-minute radius of your home. Try the one outing swap. Replace just one paid outing a month with a picnic or a walk. Track what you didn't spend. Redirecting even $400 a month quietly reshapes your future. To make this easier, there are practical tools many people don't realize exist. Apps like Park Path from the NRPA or All Trails can help you discover local amenities you might have overlooked. Your city's Department of Parks and Recreation website is another underused resource. Most offer searchable facilities and calendars of free community events that add variety without the price tag. The options are there. They're just not being sold to you. This isn't about being perfect, and it isn't about never going to a movie again. It's about reclaiming simple joys that don't come with a receipt attached. Once you start seeing parks as your own personal economy, the shift doesn't feel dramatic at first, but over time, it compounds. These spaces become anchors in a world that constantly pulls for your attention and your wallet. Awareness of these systems is more powerful than any motivation speech. You're allowed to choose freedom over fees. You're allowed to value time and peace of mind over status. And if this sparked an idea for your next Saturday morning, I hope you'll join us as we continue unpacking these hidden systems, one bench at a time. Take care.